Bro, I don't even know where to
Dude,
begin on this week's episode.
I'm so excited to talk about this episode. Let me tell you, first and foremost, I will tell you before we even normally do this at the end of the episode, but so far my favorite episode of the series.
Okay, that's fair. I would definitely say that as well. Um, Also worth noting, if you haven't watched any of Ahsoka yet, and you're just like, "Oh, episode 4 of Tano Cast, let's check this out." Spoiler alert, because we're gonna get into a bunch of stuff here in the next couple minutes here. But yeah, Ahsoka episode 4, Fallen Jedi was the title, so that kind of gives you an idea of where it's headed. And holy hell, it was everything I wanted, man. Everything I wanted and more.
I just there's so many questions I have as somebody that hasn't seen the Rebels series, and little like conversations they were having. I was like, does that have to do with Rebels? Does that not have to do with Rebels? Is that just like, am I looking too much into that? And like, there's just so many things that I'm like, little one word sentences that were said that I was like, does that mean something? Am I looking too much into that? So
You know, we'll obviously dive into it, but the thing for me that made this episode so awesome was it felt like half of it was lightsaber battles. Legit, half of the episode was like either Sabine fighting or Ahsoka fighting. It was just like, thank you. This is what I've been wanting, you know?
yeah, no, I mean that I enjoyed all of the fight scenes as well, and it was good, man. Good first few couple episodes, kind of gave a good backstory, good setup. Kind of touching a bit of the end of Rebels, things like that, on where the series is headed. And yeah, this whole episode was just all action. So I mean, we start with them trying to repair the ship, and they got Hu Yang trying to figure things out and get everything back up to speed. And we have an interesting conversation between Ahsoka and Sabine, where they are faced with a difficult decision. If they have a chance to destroy that star map, do they do it? Do they destroy it? Do they, I mean, that was kind of what Ahsoka was saying to Sabine, is like, hey, we're kind of in that situation here. If we get a chance where we can't steal it and get away with it, we have to destroy it. Can I count on you? And Sabine's like, yeah, of course. And Ahsoka's like, can I?
So put yourself in that position. Would you destroy the star map?
I was going to ask you the same question.
Whoa.
Like,
Bro, we're only like
before
4 episodes into a Tano Cast, and we're already like ESP on questions. We're good.
It was just, I don't know how bad of a guy Thrawn is, so it's hard for me to like. I mean, that was ultimately Ahsoka's thing, was like, we can't have Thrawn come back at any cost. It doesn't matter if we can possibly get Ezra back. We can't have Thrawn coming back. Sorry. And so that, to me, says he's a pretty bad guy. But I don't know. To me, it's like, put myself. What if you were out in space, Brian? Do I go save you? Or I just, the risk of Thrawn coming back?
Well, look, today is September 5th. We're recording this on September 5th. It's 10 p.m. Central Time. If we're ever in a situation where I have sacrificed myself to take away a galactic villain, and you have the chance to bring me back, but it means you have to bring the other guy back, leave me there. Leave me there.
So you're saying that if I were to be like, but Brian, we couldn't proceed with the Tano Cast without you, you'd be like, bro, I sacrificed myself to get rid of this villain, and you're really gonna let him come back? Like, seriously? What was my sacrifice for?
I think you're looking into it a little too hard. I'd probably be like, bro, it's not hard to find a bearded white guy that wants to talk about Star Wars on the internet. So, yeah, you could literally put any other generic white guy here, and they'd be like, "Oh, another episode."
No, incorrect. They can't replace you, my man. Okay, I am with Sabine. I'd go get you.
Okay, yeah, I would. I guess I don't know. Here's the thing: like Thrawn, I'm starting to like. Let me give some backstory here. Rebels is my laundry show, so when I'm folding laundry, I'm watching Rebels.
Okay. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah,
that's a good idea, though.
Because it's like one of those shows that like you really don't need to be there, but it's also like the perfect length for doing laundry, because like it's 20, 30 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
And so the episode I just watched had Thrawn in it, and he's the first villain that I've seen in the Star Wars universe that cares more about learning about his enemy than destroying his enemy. Like he's very intellectually like advanced, where like he lets the chess pieces play, and he's like, "Oh, I may have lost this battle, but I've literally learned so much about you by losing that next time I'm gonna beat you." And it's just like such a cool concept that he's like willing to like sacrifice his pawn to take the king. And yeah, I think that the sacrifice that you make, like to get rid of that guy, it's needed. But flip side, what if Thrawn is terrorizing this other galaxy? And you're like, we got to bring him back to ours to save that other galaxy.
That's
Like,
true.
what
That
if,
is a good
like,
point.
what if you got in a time machine and you sent Hitler to a different time period and he still did all the Hitler stuff? Like,
Just in a different
yeah,
area. Okay.
not saying that like
Yeah.
Thrawn and Hitler are the
Yeah.
same.
I'm
Just
we're just
gonna
gonna
clarify there. Obviously, two different
take a
things,
step
but
back.
yeah. Well, we're
I
canceled.
mean, that that's the thing about, I guess, this Thrawn guy that I just don't understand. And when you say it sounds like he's very tactical and strategic. Does he do that because he likes the only word I want to say is like the savoriness of winning, of like having the upper hand? Like, does he just like to be that way so that way he could be like, ha, I still bested you?
I don't think it's as much as that, as much as it's like it's badass intelligence, where it's like
Okay.
it's almost terrifying how smart he is, but he's not in your face about it.
Mm,
He's just very like calm, collected, but also like, oh, okay, I see why you did that, and I learned, and you're not going to do that again. It's
interesting.
pretty cool. Like he's a very unique character, and I look forward to getting him more in the scene. And we'll have to dive into it a little bit later in the show. One of the things I was like is like it's kind of cool to see this show kind of transition where like the first 4 episodes we had the same bad guys we were worried about, and then by the end
Mhm.
of it it's like, oh, the real bad guys coming. Like that's I can't wait. Like let's do this.
Yeah. And I'm interested to see what will happen with this Admiral Thrawn. Is
Yes,
that his name?
Grand Admiral
I'm
Thrawn.
so I'm interested to see like how he'll play out. Like, is he just going to be a villain in this series and that's it? I can't imagine that if he was such a large part of Rebels, that they would just bring him back for like an Ahsoka series and that's it. I would almost imagine, like you said, if they are having like this merger of like Boba Fett and Mandalorian and everything, that he would almost just kind of lead us to being like the bad guy in future chapters of other shows, I
So the
guess.
plan, as I understand, and like granted, this was like pre-writer strike when they were planning this, is that
Mm,
you're gonna have the merging of the universes into like a movie where Thrawn is the bad guy
okay.
and Mando's in there, and the Star Wars universe kind of has their Avengers Endgame moment, if you
Hmm.
will.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Well, speaking of bad guys,
yeah.
I freaking love Balin
Hmm.
and Shin. Like we talked about this. I think maybe it was the first episode of the Tano Cast, and we are just kind of talking about the background of Balin. And I was like, I'm so intrigued by this character, and this episode just further made me have more and more questions. But I love his calm demeanor, where I'm still to this moment trying to get a read on the guy.
Hmm.
And so I think it was Morgan that was like, the gods will not delay them long, because they were talking about how the Jedi, Ahsoka, and everything had landed on the planet. And so she goes, the gods will not delay them long. And he just turns to Shin and Morok, is that his
Hmm.
name? And he just goes, but you
Oh
will.
yeah,
And I was just like, that was dope. Like that was a dope line. Like, it was just so
yeah.
subtle, but it was so cool.
It's kind
I
of
loved that.
crazy how like a character like that can say like a one-liner and it does so much to his character. Like there was a moment where Morgan was like, "Do I sense fear in your voice?" And he's like, "No, I just know from experience," or something like that. And I'm just like,
He didn't even say
"Jesus."
anything.
Yeah.
He just said experience.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dang, man. Like, and again, that kind of brought up questions. I was like, what is the background of this guy? Is he a survivor from the Jedi Temple with the Order 66? Was he somewhere else at the time? Did he leave the Jedi Temple before that? Like,
Mhm.
I want to know what the heck the backstory is with this guy. Like, because I'm also kind of confused about the relation between Morgan and Balin and Shin. Like, are they just all kind of working together to bring back Thrawn? Are is Morgan like, I don't hired, I guess, by Balin and Shin? Like, are they the ones trying to bring him back, and they're going to her because she has the way to read the map, or is it the reverse? Is Morgan the one that's trying to bring Thrawn back, and she's using Balin and Shin as like little pawns
Yeah.
to do that? I'm still trying to figure out the dynamic between those three. What's your take?
I'm I still go with what you said back a couple episodes ago, where Balin's just a merc for hire. Like, I think that's his
Okay.
end game. In this episode, he did kind of get close to being like, I felt like he was gonna say what his like investment was. Like, he was kind of having these conversations about the importance of
Yeah.
getting there, and I was like, come on, like, let's go.
And
And but like, I also am just like, I'm kind of saddened by it, because like, you look at a character like this and he's so iconic and so badass and so cool, but then you know that like Ray Stevenson passed away. So it's like, this is, and maybe that's what makes it kind of like such an iconic performance, that you're just like, man, I love his character, and I love Shin, and I think they're just like, I think they're such a cool dynamic, because I don't think they're Sith. I definitely don't think that. I'm with you. I do agree that, like, what's Morgan's payoff, and I hope we kind of find out. Like, is she just an Imperial loyalist and she wants Thrawn back? But I don't know. I will say though, one of my favorite moments of this episode was Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
real steel, bro.
Yeah, real steel. Yeah.
I saw that dude. Hu Yang just gets jumped by this robot,
Yeah.
and they just start fighting. And in my head, I was like, "Have we seen droid fighting?" Like, I guess we have, kind of like between like C-3PO and the battle droids from like Attack of the Clones,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And we've seen
But
R2.
true, like,
R2 has fought like other
oh yeah, the
astromechs,
super battle
but
droids.
nothing like this.
This was like full on, like, put your hands up, and like, I laughed way too hard when this other robot like covered Hu Yang's mouth and it like muffled his voice. I was like, what? I was like, what? He's a robot. Is that where his speaker is? I was so confused. That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was and I just loved the sound effects. Like, it was just clanking, and I was just like, oh, it's just
Yeah.
over the top, just chaos. But um would you would you pay to watch like robot fights like this?
That's what I was gonna say, dude. I was gonna say, you have to imagine there has to be some sort of like
Mhm.
underground droid fighting, and there you have like betting going on. I absolutely would if I was in that universe. Hell yeah.
Have you watched BattleBots?
Hell yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Dude, I love BattleBots. I loved it when I was a kid.
I love the show, but I'm always like just disappointed because it's like Roombas with blades. Like, when I think about it, I'm like, I want this. I want Rock'em Sock'em.
Yeah.
Real steel, like you said.
Yeah, that's what it was like, except nobody was controlling these little droids. But it was, yeah, I love that scene, but just the only confusing part of it was when his voice got muffled. Because I was like, it's metal on metal, but it's muffling it. What? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll overlook that one. But that scene though, so when they start getting attacked and they realize that Hu Yang's getting attacked, and Ahsoka comes out, lightsabers ready to go. I think I answered my own question, but my question I started typing down was, are these droids attacking them or people? But I think it was people, right?
I think it was a mix.
So if it's people, Ahsoka was gnarly, dude. She stabbed this dude in the face.
Yeah.
And held it there as she force grabbed another person, threw him in front of somebody shooting at Sabine, and he just got blasted in the back, threw him, and then Sabine like grapple hooked this guy to Ahsoka, and Ahsoka just like chopped the dude's head off.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, are these people? Are these droids? Because holy cow, that was awesome. Like, it was sick.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite moments. And what I thought was kind of cool about it was that, like, it was Ahsoka being a Jedi and Sabine being like a Mandalorian, and it was like their two styles were feeding off each other. And I was like, is this foreshadowing for like what we're gonna see in a future episode. That like quit forcing Sabine to be a Jedi. She needs to be true to herself. Like, is that where we're gonna go? But I loved it. It was just such a cool aesthetic.
That makes sense. That actually, so I was kind of gonna relay that into the next scene where Huyang, like, when they decide to go off to try to get the star map back or whatever, and Huyang's like, "Hey, is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Huyang? I feel like I'm saying
Yeah,
that
you're
wrong."
good.
He's like, "Hey, make sure you guys go together.
Uh,
Like, I personally feel like you guys have always worked better together." And so
And what do they do in the
that
next scene?
was, I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, that was a moment where they were working together and they defeat 5 or 6 people,
Yeah,
right? The very next scene we get, and is it Morok and
yeah,
Shin that were just, and God, man, I swear, dude, like you were saying with Balin's character, like I literally thought the same thing too as I was watching it. I was like, he's such a great character, and then I was like, R.I.P. And like I just had that moment where I was like, man, I really hope, like, I don't know,
yeah,
I don't know. Obviously, stuff like that is tragic, and you don't tend it to happen, but it's almost like, what's going to happen with this character, because I really really enjoy the character. I really enjoy Shin, even when she just kind of like stands up and is kind of just like sitting there and kind of like walks up to them and she's like, going somewhere. Like, it was just like so subtle, but I was like,
oh
oh
yeah,
my god, I love it.
yeah. The scene where like he's like stay together, right? You guys do great together, and then they break apart. It reminded me of like every scene we get in Clone Wars where like Obi-Wan's like, "Oh, Anakin," and I was just like, I was like, he literally said stick together, and you didn't do it at all. Um,
That was my biggest gripe about that show every time. It's Anakin, stick together. And he's like, yes, master. And then the very next scene, he's off doing his own thing, and he's, oh,
yeah.
Anakin.
So when we
Oh,
get to this Sabine and Ahsoka versus Shin and Marok, like their lightsaber scene, it was everything I wanted. But what I thought was funny was like, and this is again me just like reading into this way too much, is just like every single time a Jedi faces somebody with a blaster, they like reflect the blaster directly into him and just like kill him like a stormtrooper. And I'm like, Shin could have ended Sabine so quickly because Sabine just went in straight with like dual blasters. And I was just like, just reflect the bullet into her. Like, right? Am I just think
yeah.
about that? Like,
No, you're onto something, because I think that's true. Like, you see a lot of Jedi deflect it back,
mhm,
whereas I don't think I've seen, I could be wrong, but I don't think I've seen somebody on the dark side do that.
right.
Like, maybe in like Clone Wars or Rebels or something that I haven't seen, but
Or like Vader when he
at
was
least in
like
the movies.
slaying the rebel ship in Rogue One.
Oh, I think he might have. I
Yeah,
think he might have hit a couple back at people,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. It's almost, but again, do you think that's Shin's style?
yeah,
Because I feel like she's very much like savor the kill type of person.
yeah. She's the type that like like suffocates you and like looks at you in the eyes when she does it, and you're like,
Or just chokes you out from behind.
pineapple, pineapple, pineapple. But she just keeps choking you and
Shin doesn't listen to safe words. If Shin was a dominatrix, she doesn't listen to safe words.
yeah. Um yeah, I
This,
feel like it was just like it's such a silly thing for me to complain about too because it led to like another lightsaber battle. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, hey, don't kill her cuz like, fight her with the green and red or green and orange lightsaber and like let's go. And that's what we got. We got like Marok versus Ahsoka and then Sabine versus Shin part 2. Um Epic.
now let me ask you this. There's been so much speculation about Morok, and just to see him die so quickly and in a cloud of dust, like, what the hell was that? Like, first off, okay, it was a great fight. Ahsoka's just one blade in it, which I thought was cool. Like, she doesn't always use two. I love seeing her style because, again, it seemed very samurai like the way she was holding things, and I was like, ooh, it's like she's got a katana or something. Like, it was cool. And then he just does that, and he just goes right after her. And I think she just kind of slips and avoids it, and then just slices him in the chest, and then he just, like the mummy, just busts open. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I was so confused. Like, what is that supposed to be? What was he made of? Just dust?
I think that this
Evil?
is going to be the most controversial part of this episode. is that
Oh yeah.
leading up to this, the community, it's really the community's fault because like they're like, oh, it's Starkiller, oh, it's this person or it's this person. There's so much mystery about it, but I loved the fact that they let him die, and it was just him. Like there was no like take off the mask and like oh like oh it was him. Like they just let him die and it was it. And I was like, okay, that was cool. Like thank you. Like it doesn't have to be a big payoff of a character. It's just a bad guy. But the dust, I I don't know. So you obviously have to think that Marok is associated with Morgan, that he's not associated with Balin and Shin. So she's
Ooh.
a witch. So it could have been like some voodoo magic that she did. So Dathomir magic, and
Okay.
she maybe like brought him to life or something like that. But
That's a good
maybe
point.
we
So
see him
maybe it was
again.
like, well, I was gonna say maybe it's like maybe they were working together as like three,
Yeah.
and maybe he was dead, and maybe she brought him back to life with her witchcraft. Maybe that's a connection between them
Yeah.
because Shin looked very upset
Yeah.
when she realized he was dead, and it wasn't like a like most times when Sith are working together or something like that, or bad guys are working together and somebody dies. A lot of times it's just like, oh, they were pathetic or useless. So you actually saw like some sort of hurt and pain within Shin. Like she was like, she stopped fighting. She stopped fighting Sabine. She completely just, at that point, Sabine could have just stabbed her and it would have been over. But Shin just looks over and she just like, is like, oh my gosh. And she's just like so taken aback. And I'm like, who? So are we going to get a payoff? Are we going to get a payoff who this guy is? Or is that it? What
So
do you think?
this was where I was like, I thought the episode was going in one direction after I saw him die. I was like, oh shoot,
Okay.
they're gonna kill off Marok, they're gonna kill off Shin, and they're gonna kill off Balin, like all in this episode. Like I thought that's where it was headed,
Oh,
because then
really?
the ship gets away, and then the next big baddie is Thrawn, right? So it's like these are the guys who got us here,
Oh.
and now they have the bigger problem. I was more blown away that Shin Balin survived. Like I was totally prepared for them to die this episode. And so now I'm just like, dang, like we're gonna have four bad guys: Morgan, Shin, Balin, and Thrawn. Like, what is that gonna look like in this show? And right now, if you think about it, Ahsoka and Sabine are just two people. How are they gonna fight the rest of them?
It's not looking good.
No, not at all. Although I will say, dude from Kim's Convenience, I wrote down his name. Where would I write it? Carson. Carson.
Yeah,
He showed up, and
he did.
I love Carson, dude. He is the one character that has kind of come through since like the Mandoverse. And
Yeah.
I think the thing that saves it is like I don't know if you've seen like the videos of him at Comic-Con dressed up as like Star Wars characters all the time. So he's
No,
like
but
a
I was gonna.
die-hard Star Wars fan. So like just
Oh,
see
is
him in
he?
the show,
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
dude, keep this guy alive as long as we can keep him. He's like my Stan Lee right now.
Do you think? I was gonna say, do you think he's like Agent Coulson, like of Shield?
Yeah.
Like he's gonna bring everybody together?
Yeah, it's possible, man. Like when Hera got in her ship and was like, "I'm gonna do this myself. I'm a general, like taking charge." And then you see the X-wings next to her. I was like, "Are they gonna do it?" And then they showed Carson, dude, and I was like, "Yeah, like let's go, man!"
Yeah.
Like,
So, question: were you more excited to see him or Chopper?
um, I do have a Chopper story. Can we take a little divergence?
Dude,
Okay,
okay. Yeah. Let's
so
put this on
yeah, so
pause.
Rebels, like I said, is my laundry show. My wife was putting my daughter to bed last night, and
Okay.
she gave my wife a hug, and she goes, "Dad, a hug." So she wanted to give me a hug. Well, I didn't know she heard me listening to Rebels in the other room, and so my wife was like, "Hey, just FYI, she wants to give you a hug." And like my daughter comes walking into the room, beelines right past me, climbs up on the couch, just sits down, and just starts watching Rebels. Like she heard Star Wars in the other room. She's like, I gotta go. And like she's starting to understand Star Wars. Like she's obsessed with BB-8 and she's obsessed with R2. Like she loves the droids. And so when Chopper came on, she was laughing every second that Chopper was on. And then
That's
I
awesome.
think it was this morning I was talking to her and I was like, "Oh yeah, remember Chopper?" And she's like, "Wah, wah, 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 wah."
Dude, she Jedi mind tricked your
She
wife.
did 100%.
She's like, "I'll give Dad a hug."
Yeah.
She just sits there and watches the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should be like, hey, she's your Padawan now,
Yeah,
bro.
she's my Padawan.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Now I got to
fantastic,
take her to
man. That's got to
Galaxy's
feel
Edge and get
great.
her a lightsaber.
And a chopper,
And a chopper.
apparently.
Yeah.
That's so
But
cool,
no,
man.
yeah, to answer your question, I was more excited to see Carson this episode than Chopper.
Chopper was okay. He had a couple lines,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a couple ones. I literally like. I don't know how to say this. Rewinded, reversed. I literally went back to see what he was saying because, you know, like you can kind of somewhat understand him, and like I don't remember. Wait,
What is the term?
Hera's son, right?
Because it's digital, so you're not rewinding tape.
Right, but that's the term.
Going back,
traveling back in time briefly.
Sure.
Put in the comments if you know what we should be calling.
Sorry, you were going in one direction, and you just threw me off with that one. I was like, yeah, that's not tape. It's a whole generation that's like, what do you mean rewind? We're not winding anything. What are you talking about?
I don't know, man. What's Hera's son's name? Jason. So when he was all like, how come you don't have to listen to orders, but I do? And then she's like, oh. And then Chopper says something like, yeah, what's up with that? Or something. It's almost like what he says. And then she's like, well, when you're a general, you can do whatever you want or not listen to orders if you don't want to. And then Chopper's like, I'm okay with that. Or something like that. Like, I'm curious what Chopper was saying, but.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man.
Ahsoka kills Marok, and he turns into like a dust cloud and just like screams, right? And then Shin is distracted, and it gives Sabine the chance to have like the upper hand. And there was this really funny moment when Sabine tried to use the Force, and it was just like so pitiful. She tried to push her, and it like didn't even phase her. And I was just like, "You're screwed. You're in trouble here."
She's like, "You have no power."
Yeah, how ruthless was that, man?
God, what I thought was even more ruthless before that was when, after Ahsoka took out Morok, and then Sabine's like, "Go for the map," and she's like, "I got this." And so then Shin just like literally just like gets like in her face, and she's like, you are going to regret that decision. And I was just like, dang, like their freaking lines that they say as villains, I think are so impactful. And it was just like such like a oh maybe I will regret this. Oh good, maybe I should have went with her.
Yeah. And then but of course, like that scene ends with Sabine using her Mando tricks to survive. So she fails as a Jedi, and she's like, does she shoot the lightsaber out of Shin's hand? Is that how what went down?
So she put her hand up, and that was what she kind of like force slapped her, I guess you could say. So that she was like, "You're so weak," and she still had her hand up, and then she just puts her wrist down and just uses the little missile like right at the lightsaber. So Shin goes to deflect it, but I think it was almost like it was such a fast thing that it just kind of hit the lightsaber and knocked it out of her hand. So then freaking Shin uses the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Foot Clan Ninja Vanish cloud of smoke, and then she just dips, which I thought was weird because it's like, I don't know, that was just kind of an out of character thing for Shin. I felt like
if you use the Force properly, that wouldn't mean anything, right? Like you'd be able to know where they went.
I'm just saying, like, if Shin can use the Force, which she clearly can, you had Sabine. Like, finish her off, you know?
You know what's also kind of weird is like we see a Force choke in this episode, and I was thinking about this moment. I was like, dude, if I was a Sith, I would just use a Force choke constantly. Like,
you can't seem to deflect against
it.
it.
So like, if I'm in a lightsaber battle with a Jedi, I'm just gonna choke the out of you, like, and like you're just like, and you're dead. Like you can't stop it. Like, I don't know. I'd be the best Sith.
I'd be the best Sith. They'd call me Sir Chokes-a-Lot.
They would, yeah. Oh not, God, you hear Chokes-a-Lot's on the ship this week. There goes
like Kylo. When you throw a fit, instead you start choking everybody out. Choke people with your pinkies.
Yeah, everybody would just be using their safe words, just pineapple, pineapple, pineapple.
And like Shin, you wouldn't listen.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. So yeah, from that scene we get Baylan versus Ahsoka, and we kind of hear that line where Balin's like, Anakin spoke highly of you, and he did say he was part of the Jedi Order, so, or at least alluded to
Yeah,
that he was part
well,
of the Jedi Order.
he said the Order,
Hmm.
so you are fully assuming he's referring to the Jedi Order.
Yes.
There was a couple things that were like earlier in the episode. Hera, when she wasn't really listening to orders, she was like, "Once a rebel, always a rebel,"
Hmm.
and I was like, "Dang!" I was like, "Call back, what's up?" Um, but then I wrote down here, Anakin spoke highly of you, and then of course Ahsoka's little retort was snarky, which I love that Rosario Dawson is keeping that snarky attitude about Ahsoka, because she's like, interesting. She's like, never mentioned you. Like, instead of like saying like, who are you, or anything like that was how she handled that.
Yeah.
And this whole conversation and everything about this whole episode that I loved so much was there was so much tension. There was tension everywhere. Beginning of the episode with the mystery of like what's watching them from the forest, the tension in the fight scenes, the tension in the lightsaber fight scene between Shin and Sabine and Ahsoka and Morok, and then the tension that was the buildup before Ahsoka fighting Balin. They were just kind of like almost like sizing each other up. Like
Hmm.
they just kept walking around each other doing different poses, and I was just like, ooh, like you can cut it with a knife, like a butter knife.
Yeah.
But the whole episode was just
It
tension, and I
was.
loved it.
Yeah, and it was one of those that's like, I hope. I mean, we got 8 episodes, so we're at the halfway point. But like, I hope we do
Oof.
get a little bit of Balin's backstory, like just a little bit.
Yeah. Did you not? And again, I always seem to reference Marvel, but it's like a lot of what he was saying reminded me of like uh Thanos,
Hmm.
because he was like,
He did have a
you
very
know,
Thanos line in this episode.
well, he had said, in order to destroy, or in order to create, you must destroy.
Hmm.
And then he even said, inevitable. He said that it was.
He said, "I am inevitable."
He didn't say I am inevitable. He goes, how inevitable is what he said,
Yeah.
because he was talking about, you must destroy in order to create, and then he just goes, how inevitable. And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, Thanos, what's going on
Yeah.
here?
Even
What is
though
happening?
that like Ray Stevenson's dead, um, I do think that like Star Wars has like done these Tales of the Jedi series, which like
Hmm.
fills in the backstory. Like we got more about Dooku and we got more about Ahsoka. Like it would be cool to see them like expand Balin from the animated side, especially since like we've got Rebels and Clone Wars tying into these series. Like they totally could expand Balin as a villain on the animated side, and I would be all in because this character is
It de-
just too good to just let fall to the wayside.
One thing I'm concerned about is, do they make this villain, and like me and you love him, think he's fantastic, but maybe they didn't have that as so much of a plan. Like
Ooh.
like you said, you were okay with them dying this
Mm-hmm.
episode, and they very well could have, and it would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, they were a quick little bad guy, but it's like, did they know that it was going to be as impactful to people like you and I? Like, there might be people out there, people watching, that are like, I don't really like Balin and Shin.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they're too bland. Like, are we reading too much into it? We think they're awesome, and some people don't.
Yeah, maybe the Phantom Menace generation is like, this guy's awesome, but then like the Return of the Jedi is like worst villain ever. Like, what is your yeah, like? And we talk about this a lot. Generational. Have you talked to your dad about Balin and like what his thoughts on him?
I haven't asked him directly like what he thinks about him.
Yeah.
He likes the show,
Mm-hmm.
but he hasn't seen Rebels, so he's a lot like me,
Mm-hmm.
where he hasn't seen it at all. So he's kind of going into it knowing who Ahsoka is, because he's watched. I don't know if he's seen all of Clone Wars. He might have. I think he said he finished it, but um, yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of get his take too on how he feels about this guy. I'm assuming he thinks he's awesome,
Yeah, it'd be
but
interesting to see where the generation, if it's like a generational split on it. Like, obviously, you got the younger generation. Like, what do they think of Balin? Like, and then what about that older generation? And then, like, unfortunately, we're
yeah,
in that mid generation. So it's just like it's interesting. And there was a really cool moment where, so obviously, like him and Ahsoka go at it, and they have like this real like equal fight where they're both kind of getting the upper hand on each other. and Ahsoka takes the star map and it burns her hand, and then like it stops her from like being able to defeat him, and Sabine shows up, like all this complication. But there was a moment that added so much character to Balin where I was like, oh, don't kill him this episode, and like my tune completely changed. Was when Balin was talking to Sabine, and Sabine was trying to play it off like she was going to destroy it, and instead of like attacking her, Balin just stopped, closed his eyes, listened and sensed her in the Force, and immediately knew everything about her. And I was like,
That's what I
oh
was.
shoot, like this guy's next level, man. Like,
Yeah, that's why I was like, can he read minds? Is he just
mhm.
searching his feelings through the Force, like learn using those Jedi training that he had from before to? Because I mean, Yoda was very much like that too.
Yeah.
Yoda would very much tell you exactly what you're feeling and how what you're thinking, or at least ask the right questions to bring that up. But for him to kind of be so like exactly right on things, it is very interesting. It's kind of very telling of how powerful essentially he is.
Isn't it also
Um,
kind of cool that like we've gone from having one baddie of film and like one really good bad guy where it was like Clone Wars, you had the Emperor, Vader, Maul, Dooku, and it's just kind of a very centralized idea. Like this is the main bad guy for this movie. Granted, like it's all a big group, but like it's just one bad guy. But in this one, we essentially have four bad characters that are like so enticing. Shin, Balin, great. Marok, I think a lot of people were interested in the mystery behind him, but he was still a badass character. And then you look at a Thrawn, who hasn't even shown up in this series, and he's still looming over. It's just such a cool. Yeah, you hit it on the head when you said it was just like tension. The entire episode, just you could feel it.
I was really hoping you weren't going to say Morgan because I was like, I can do without her. Like, I'm so just like that was the only reason I was giving faces when you're like, oh, we got like four good bad guys. I
Yeah,
was like, Morgan's. I don't really consider
yeah.
her.
If Morgan starts pulling out like the the Dathomir magic stuff where she's like making wormhole
That
portals
was
and like
interesting.
doing stuff like that to fight Ahsoka with lightsabers, then it's gonna be interesting. But I don't think she's long for this show. I don't think she survives this.
Yeah, I was wondering if when Ahsoka picked up the star map and it like burned her, my first thought was like, is that witchcraft or is that like the heat from it? Because Sabine was able to just kind of hold it,
Did
and
Ahsoka
was
burn
that
her hand in the first episode when she picked it up, or was she wearing gloves?
I don't know.
I was trying to think of that. We'll have to look back at that and talk about that later.
I was wondering like maybe she put something like some spell on it,
Mm.
like Jedi can't touch this or something. That's why Sabine could touch it. She's not really a Jedi or something. I don't know. But yeah, man, Sabine didn't destroy it.
How crazy is it? Okay, we've been talking about this episode for almost 40 minutes now, and we haven't even gotten to
Dude, like there's
the
so
greatest
much.
moment of
There's
this.
so much. Like that's what I'm saying. I knew this was gonna run past our like 30 minutes. We typically like try to keep these two,
Yeah.
but so let's get down to them real
Yeah.
quick. So with the oh gosh, Ahsoka gets hit off the ledge.
Yep.
Okay, right before that, Ahsoka kind of goes like haywire because she thinks Sabine's dead because she sees Shin show up and she's fighting Balin still, and then she just kind of like grabs Shin, throws her against the rock. And mind you, this lightsaber fights that we've been seeing this whole episode, they cut through everything.
Yeah.
Trees,
Yeah.
rocks, everything. Like, there's a whole discussion about what lightsabers cut through and can't cut through anymore. Because holy cow, these lightsabers cut through everything.
Yeah.
But right after that, Ahsoka gets knocked off a cliff. We have a conversation with Balin and Sabine. Sabine threatens to destroy the map, doesn't. Like we said, he kind of coerces her into giving it up. Bad guys seem to win at this point. They're taking Sabine on board, and he just takes the lightsaber and just destroys that map with his lightsaber, which I thought was freaking awesome. Like, it was cool because it almost seemed like it was going to explode, and then I thought it was kind of like anticlimactic that it just kind of fell apart because it was like building up. It was like, and it just fell apart. I was like, oh. But then Hera shows up.
Yes.
Hera with your boy, what's his name?
Carson.
And they are trying to intervene because Hu Yang's kind of telling him, hey, they're trying to stop them from leaving. You need to stop the ship if it's trying to leave. So what is this, like a reverse holdo maneuver?
Yeah, I wrote down holdover mover or maneuver.
That's what I did.
But because
Holdo maneuver.
it's a ring, they went through
Just
the center, and it didn't. It was interesting.
like at first she was just like, they're like, oh, they're directly in our path, and she's like, just go,
Yeah,
like do it anyway. And I was like, is she about to kill these people? Because I was like, oh my gosh, like again, I haven't seen Rebels, but I know Hera's a pretty big part of Rebels. Like,
yeah,
what if Hera just died there? What would that mean to you? Somebody that's seen Rebels.
it'd be a big impact because Hera's like the
and her son,
figurative glue that holds the whole group together.
Dang, so that would have been real
bad.
bad.
Yeah, like that. Like if you going into Ahsoka series, Hera is the one character that I'm like, okay, you can't kill Hera. Like you could maybe kill Sabine and get away with it, but Hera's the one that I don't think you can kill just because she's so impactful. Plus, I found out, thanks to TikTok, that Hera is in Rogue One, which I had no clue. So when they're at the Rebel base over the loudspeaker, you see Chopper going through the base, and then over the loudspeaker it says, "Commander Syndulla, please report for blah 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 blah." And then when they go to Scarif and like the whole Rebel fleet comes to protect them, the ghost ship that Hera flies is actually flying in that battle fighting TIE fighters. And I was like,
oh, snap.
Damn, dude. And I'm like, that's pretty sick that they had the foresight to like bring it all together, you know?
Dang, that's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah, so like the hyperdrive like flying off, it like was a really cool moment. And so the star map gave them the exact coordinates that they needed to get to where Thrawn was. And when Ahsoka removed it, they just needed one left or one last code. So they had to put it back in. But like they had this really sick scene where Sabine was just like holding on to it. And Balin was like, hey, give me it. I know you just want to get to Ezra. I'll take you to Ezra. And there was this like real tense moment where like Sabine wasn't going to hand it over. But then she hands over the star map, dude.
Like a fool.
Like I can't curse.
That's so
like
knew
a
she
Mandalorian. Like a Mandalorian is what she did, man. Like it's just so. But like, and then Shin starts force choking her
from behind.
Yeah.
Like you see her start kind of like choking. You're like, what's going on? And then you see Shin. Like, super angry from behind. And I was like, oh snap! Like, and even Balin was like, let her go. Like, I promise, I'm not going to be like her last master. Which I thought was like, again, the intrigue of this freaking character, because it's like, is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? Does he just have this vision of like, do you think he's just super betrayed by Anakin?
What if, and here we go. I've got no spoilers. I have no idea where this show's going. I'm just making my prediction.
Okay.
Shin and Balin were betrayed by Thrawn or impacted by Thrawn during like the Rebels. Like those characters, we don't see them. But what if they were impacted similar, like where like their home planet was destroyed by Thrawn, so they want to get revenge, and so we get like a big twist at the end where like Balin, Shin, Ahsoka, Sabine are all together against Thrawn.
Dang, that'd be sick.
It's a very Disney ending, if you ask me.
It is, but that would be cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like they're
definitely going about it a weird way if that was their end goal.
That's a stretch, but
yeah, you'd think
because I was thinking, I was like, what about?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, thinking about Morok, like that kind of explained Shin's like upset, and I was like, oh, but he's really a good guy, like.
Yeah, just a simple conversation that, hey guys, we all have the same goal here. Like maybe we should work together.
It's like that again, freaking Marvel.
Yeah.
The whole like Guardians of the Galaxy thing, like where they're on the same side, but they don't realize that they all want the same thing.
What's Gamora?
Why is Gamora?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Ahsoka gets knocked off a cliff, and she gets sent into what I took it as was the world between worlds.
Dude, your freaking thing you talked about.
Yeah, I was very blown away by that. I was like, oh, they went there, because there's a lot of people on TikTok that said this will never happen.
Right. Well, a lot of people that I think that were saying on TikTok were saying that like they would never retcon
Yes. Yeah.
the most recent trilogy, which I understand.
Yep.
But again, I don't know this World Between Worlds place, but you were explaining it, and that's exactly what it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we hear in the background?
Snips.
Hey, Snips.
Hell yeah, man.
Hello, Snips. Hello, Snips is what he says.
As someone who has seen Clone Wars all the way through, let me tell you, uh, a tear welled up in my eyes, man. I was like, oh,
No.
I was like, yeah, just
No.
because like the way that series ends, man. Like, there's this really and obviously it's not really like a spoiler because like we know what happens, right? Anakin turns to the dark side, and literally
What?
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 Yeah, Anakin's Darth Vader. What? Um,
What?
so the final season of Clone Wars gets into like Order 66, like what happens at that moment, why do the clones betray them, and what happens to Anakin, what happens to Ahsoka, and there's this moment where Ahsoka is reaching out into the Force and she's trying to communicate with Anakin, and Anakin's not responding, and she's like, something's up,
Mm.
something's going on, and then Order 66 happens, and the reason Ahsoka can't communicate with Anakin is because Anakin's gone. Vader is now there, and she can't communicate with Vader. And so in Rebels, there's a moment where when Ahsoka senses Anakin for the first time, and she passes out because she's like, "Oh my god, like my master's still alive." And that's where you get that epic scene that I know you've seen, where she's like, "My master's dead," and he's like, well, so will you." And she's like, "Well, I'm no Jedi," and they have like that whole fight
Right,
scene.
right,
And
right.
so when you tie all of that, like 7 seasons of Clone Wars, and you see the character development between the master and the apprentice and becoming best friends and the betrayal and then all of that, and then you come to this moment where Ahsoka's like, her last interaction was with Vader, and she's like, "Well, my friend must be dead," like kind of similar to what Obi-Wan did, right? And then she hears Anakin, and I'm like, "Oof, oof," just pull
Dang.
on the
Yeah.
heartstrings, man.
I mean, I haven't finished it. I haven't seen it. I've only seen what, like one season of Clone
Mm-hmm.
Wars, but I will tell you when I heard Hello Snips,
Mm-hmm.
I chills immediately filled me and I was like, "Oh, snap." And like again, we kind of knew Anakin was discussed in
Yeah.
this and it was kind of brought up with this episode with Balin talking about him and I was like, "Is that it? Is that all they're going to say?" And just she turns around and sees him
Mm-hmm.
and freaking Hayden Christensen looking like a younger Anakin is there just standing staring at her and I was just like, holy cow, man. Like again, like you said, everything that they've been through, everything she's been through, and if the last time she faced Anakin was facing Vader and now Anakin is standing before her, what the hell is this
Yeah.
place? Is this supposed to be Anakin as a Force ghost after Return of the Jedi? Is this,
Yeah.
what is this?
Like one of the things that I don't know if I was just reading into this, but when I first saw Hayden Christensen as Anakin again, I was like, they did a good job of matching his face to Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi when they take the mask off. Because like this section of his face looked literally like what Vader looked like when he was bald and like dying in it. I was like, I want to almost put like a side by side image because they look so perfect. But then just the age of it, man. Like he was an older Anakin, but like a also young Clone Wars Anakin, you know? And I was just like, oh, this is everything I want, man. Like I want just the circle to be closed. I want this whole story arc. And what's interesting is this Friday, Disney Plus has a standalone like little featurette coming out called Master and Apprentice, and it dives into the story of Ahsoka and Anakin, and it like goes into like the whole thing. And it's not going to be
Like
like
a
its
live
own
action?
show. No, it's not going to be its own. It's just like they're going to be interviewing Rosario. They're going to be interviewing Hayden, similar to like what they did for Obi
Oh
Wan,
wow.
where they interviewed Ewan and they interviewed
Hmm.
Hayden. Um, so I assume next week's episode, maybe all of it has to do with Anakin. Would be my guess. Like because it was a cliffhanger. It literally went straight to credits when they showed Anakin, and I was just like,
Did
y'all
you
gonna make me
hear?
wait 7 days?"
Did you hear the Darth Vader tone immediately when it went to black?
Bum Bum, ba-dum,
And I was like,
bum, ba-dum.
dude, what? Like, what's that? What's the meaning behind that? Like,
Yeah.
obviously with him, is this like a good Anakin? Is she gonna be mad? Is she excited to see him? Like,
Mhm. Like,
we have to wait. We have to freaking wait for this,
and
dude.
again, it comes back to like Anakin. It's so interesting to see. Like, I'm so excited to see him, but at the same time, he's a bad guy. He murdered kids
He
and blew up
murdered younglings.
planets. Like, and everybody's just like, "Oh my god, it's Anakin!" It's like, no, f
Yeah.
that guy. That guy led a genocide against Jedi's. Like,
That's what I'm saying. So this whole world between world things, is this the Anakin that we know and is at the end of
ooh.
Return of the Jedi, and this is a Force Ghost Anakin, or is this another
Yeah, I didn't even think
Anakin?
about that. That's a really good point. So, like, she could have gone back in time to Anakin before turning to the dark side. Like,
What Anakin is this? But then you hear the Darth Vader tone. That's why I'm like, what Anakin is this? Like, what? I don't know. There's man, so many questions. That's why I said this whole episode just filled me with more and more and more questions. Now, one thing too, I did have a question on that I forgot to bring up earlier. When Balin was fighting Ahsoka, she said, "Your legacy, much like your master's, is one of death and destruction." What does that mean? Like, it word around town that Ahsoka's a murderer? Like, I didn't understand that. Is there something that happens in Rebels that she gets framed for or something?
no, well, yeah, so she does get framed for something in Clone Wars, but I don't think that's what he was referring to. I think what he was referring to is that, like, this battle's a losing battle for you, because they talked about, like, starting a new war. And what I took that line as was that, like, her failure is going to lead to more death and destruction, and, like, that's going to be your legacy. That, like, you were the Jedi that couldn't stop this from happening. Like, that's how I read
Okay.
into it. But
Got it. Okay.
yeah, no, I'm. These next 7 days are going to be tough, dude. Whew.
I'm just imagining how much stuff we're gonna see on social media about the last 3 minutes of this episode
Mhm.
and what it's gonna mean. Like, again, like you said, I'm so excited to see Anakin, but he's a bad guy. Or is he?
Yeah,
Or is this still good Anakin?
yeah.
I don't know. The younglings.
So to close us out, I guess first off, what would you rank this episode?
10.
A 10.
10 out of 10. The only thing I did not like was the muffling of a robot's voice. I didn't understand that at all.
How?
He's talking normal, and then a piece of metal goes. He's like, "Oh no, what is it?" And I'm like, "What?
Yeah.
What are you? How? What?"
Yeah. Yeah, I'm probably there with you. Like, it was a great episode. Like, it was just such.
I loved it.
And here's the thing: like, if you would have encapsulated these 4 episodes into like its own movie, it would have been good, man. Like, it just like if this 4 episodes was its own like episode 1, and then you go episode 2, and then episode 3. Oh yeah, man, it would have been. This would have been perfect. It was a good ending. So
yeah,
I'm with you at 10. I got a little bit of a so basically, if you guys aren't aware, if you listen to Tano Cast and you don't listen to the Scruffy Nerf Herder podcast, we end every single episode watching TikToks. I have a Ahsoka TikTok that kind of like feeds into this perfectly.
We're doing that right now.
Well, yeah, I've got one I want to show you because
okay,
we talked a couple weeks ago about the intro to Ahsoka and how it was the scroll going through. And I was like, I wish they would have done something where like they would have done like an intro to like what they do at Clone Wars, or where they like did a recap. Someone took the scroll from Ahsoka and then had an AI bot copy the voice of the guy from Clone Wars and read it. So I just want to share this with you real quick. Let me get this pulled up real quick.
Awesome. You know we love that guy.
Yeah.
The evil galactic empire has fallen, and a new republic has risen to take its place. However, sinister agents are already at work to undermine the fragile peace. A plot is underway to find the lost Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn and bring him out of exile. Once presumed dead, rumors are spreading of Thrawn's return, which would galvanize the Imperial remnants and start another war. Former Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano captured one of Thrawn's allies and learned of a secret map which is vital to the enemy's plan. Ahsoka now searches for the map as her prisoner. Morgan Elsbeth is transferred to the New Republic for trial.
That's all.
That would have been enough for me.
Yeah, that's all I wanted. All I wanted.
Take note, Disney.
Yeah, for your next spin-off series from a character that you took over a decade and a half to build. How about we do that next?
Is that guy in Rebels as well, or is it just Clone Wars?
Yeah, Rebels starts off just like a normal
Shame.
show. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. We both gave it 10s. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing more Anakin, and
cannot wait.
Let us know in the comment section, of course, what you guys thought about it. I'm very interested. And then
everybody just hates it.
Yeah, everyone's like, worst episode ever. I can't
2 out of 10.
Marok wasn't a Star Killer. Wasn't that legit? I think is going to be the biggest gripe.
Oh, there's gonna be a lot of issues with that. Or was he a clone?
Mm-hmm.
They've been dabbling a lot in cloning lately. Was he just like a clone?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to say that Marok is
just dead.
Is a dead zombie that Morgan used like Dathomir magic to bring to life. Like that's going to be my bet there. But
we'll see.
There is something. I know we keep trying to end this, but like there was something that I saw where someone was saying he was supposed to be Starkiller because the actor who plays Starkiller in the video game was credited in the first episode. But then people went back and listened, and that actor does the voice of Maul for Rebels, and Maul's voice is in the first episode. So they're like, that's where he came from.
Yeah, because he said something like, I think he says Ezra, and then he said like, is he the one or something like that? I don't know. But yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So anyway, episode 5 next week. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode. May the Force be with you.
Peace. Always.